Okay, so what are the best decks in Hearthstone right now? And this is a revised list after, all of the meta has settled down a little bit after the nerfs, because at the beginning, things were kind of hectic, but now it's settled down, and I think I can give you a better tier list. So, I'm going to start off with the first ones being the top tier decks at a lower skill cap, and then the other ones will be a higher skill cap tier list, and I'm going to try to do like 4 or 5 for each one. So the first one is Secret Paladin in the lower skill cap tier. It's a very easy deck to pick up. You basically just want to go for as much early game tempo as possible, keeping things like First Day of School, Night of Atonement, of Anointment, whatever, Righteous Protector, Crab Rider, Hand of Adal, the Sword of the Fallen, and then curving out into your mid game and late game with Hammer of Naru and Kazakus. Cards like Northwatch Commander are also good to keep as well if you have like a Sword of the Fallen, and basically you just play tempo, you curve out, and then you force the opponent to deal with secrets, and since they don't know what it is, you're playing mind games with them, and you're just kind of winning through tempo and just extra resources. So it's a really good deck. It's very simple. You basically just play tempo, mostly go face, occasionally trade, especially with like a rush minion into your weapon, and like I said, it's pretty simple, and I think it's the best deck in the game right now. It has like a 60% win rate at lower ranks being anywhere from like plat and below, so yeah, try this deck out. The next deck on this list is Face Hunter, and this Face Hunter deck has been refined to the most part, but you could definitely still make some changes, right? You don't necessarily need all of the legendaries. Like Barrick can be slow, and if you don't have Mancrick in your deck, it kind of sucks, so you could run another Knife Fender if you want, but the point is, this deck is really, really, really strong. You basically just try to keep as many 1-drops as possible, along with the Imprisoned Felmaw, Kulker, Pack Runner, and Mancrick. So basically, 1-cost minions and the cards that I just mentioned. And then from there, you basically go face with pretty much everything, and then your opponent can't really deal with the damage. Later on, you can play the Warsong Wrangler into Trampling Rhino. Also, Warsong Wrangler is okay to keep on the coin, in my opinion. I really like it. If you have an extra card lying around, you can have it be this one, because getting the Tundra Rhino to be a 7/6 guaranteed on turn 5 is pretty strong. So all those things considered, it's basically a deck where you play things on curve, you go face, and then at the end of the game, you dump whatever you have left, and try to do as much damage to their face as possible. Also while pressing the hero power button a ton of times. It's just a really good deck, especially if you're a beginner. There are ways you can make it more budget, like Mancrick's free, but you could take out the weapon or Barrick for this 2-drop weapon right here, and another Knife Fender if you need to, and it's pretty good. The next one is Token Shaman, which I did not expect to be as good as it was, but it's actually a very good deck, especially at lower ranks when people don't know how to play patiently and how to play around giant wide boards. And because of that, I'm putting it here in the top tier. So, yeah, basically what you want to do with this deck is keep Gibberling, Nature Studies, Guess the Weight, Lunar Eclipse, Fungal Fortunes, and Glowfly Swarm. Because your 2 main power spikes are Gibberling, which work well with some of the early game stuff. Also, Adorable Infestation, keep that if you have Gibberling. But like I said, some of these other early game cards draw you cards or give you resources to pop off turn 1, or the card draw cards like Guess the Weight and Fungal Fortunes make your hands big enough to where Glowfly Swarm can be a game winner turn 5. You can also keep Lightning Bloom if you want. I think it's okay. Innervate's a little bit slow, but since Lightning Bloom gives you 2 mana crystals, it's okay to keep because it accelerates you a ton. But yeah, you basically just wait and have like giant combo turns. This isn't necessarily like a fast aggro deck because you're not playing stuff every turn trying to kill them really fast. It's more of a like, okay, play Gibberling turn 2 or 3 with several other spells and pop off, or play Glowfly Swarm turn 5, and if they don't wipe the board, play Arbor up and finish them off that turn. It's more of a combo deck, but it's pretty fun. It's really cheap, as you can see, no legendaries, and I would recommend it if you're on a budget or just like this kind of deck. So the last deck on the lower elo tier list is Deathrattle Demon Hunter, which is good because it has pretty solid tempo, it's relatively self-explanatory, has good draw, and has 2 really good late game win conditions with Deathspeaker Blackthorn and Illidari Inquisitor. And the only thing I have to say about the Inquisitor is remember, the Inquisitor can attack, and then if you attack with your face, it will attack again. So if you play this on turn 9, you can use it to kill a taunt minion, and then go face with your hero power because you're Demon Hunter, and then have Illidari Inquisitor go face again. It's just a quick little thing. But yeah, basically, you really don't do too much turn 1, but you can hero power. Turn 2, you got a couple of minions. Turn 3 is when you really start picking up the pace. And then after turn 3, you just play the best cards you can on any given turn to develop tempo, draw some of your good cards off of maybe like Talon or Skull of Gul'dan, and this is a deck that is different from the other ones, because while the other ones are more aggressive, this is more tempo based that really does like going to turn 8 or 9 and using these cards as the finisher. Whereas the other decks I mentioned usually will end the games pretty quickly. So this deck, I think, bridges the gap between the low elo and the high elo very well, because it's very good in both ranks, and it's fairly simple to play, but also pretty hard to master, and you want to know when to draw, when to hold on to your minions, when to play conditioning, when to armor, when to commit to the board, and all that stuff. So overall, this deck is a fairly tempo-ish deck, because it's not hard control like other warrior decks, but since your minions have rush, it's still kind of a control deck that is really good at fighting for the board, and it's good at dealing with decks like Hunter or Paladin, because you can gain armor while also developing a board, killing off their minions, and then eventually getting to the late game where you'll play Troublemaker, AAECAZICAA, or the Overlord Runethak, which will pump up the minions in your hand, which is pretty solid. And if you want to run the Morshan Elite, you can. It's not bad. However, I think it would make the deck a little bit more clunky. You could take out maybe Warmaul Challenger, but I just like it too much to put in the Morshan Elite. But it does do well with Pump, so if you want to experiment with it, you can. So the first deck on the high elo tier list specifically is Control Priest. And the reason why Control Priest is so good is because it beats the best decks in the meta right now that have the highest win rate, being Paladin to a decent extent, unless they get a really lucky Oh My Yogg. Hunter, this deck beats really hard. And then it beats Token Druid, and all of those decks from around Bronze to Plat are the top of the top right now. And then once you get to a higher rank, you'll play against a couple more control classes, but you'll even beat those because you have some really good late game value with Malygos, Ysera, Cthulhu, and Yogg. I will say Control Warlock is your hardest matchup, or one of the hardest matchups. However, the problem with that matchup is the fact that the Ticketus will burn all of your best cards. But if you change your mulligans around whenever you play against a Warlock to keep your high win rate cards like Malygos, Ysera, Cthulhu Pieces, and Yogg-Saron, they're less likely to be burned when they play Ticketus. So you just have to change the way that you mulligan into certain matchups, and that's why it's kind of high skill cap. Also, it's high skill cap because it's hard to go from like a more tempo aggro based deck that most people start off playing to a control deck that doesn't have many minions, and because of that, it could be a little bit overwhelming to take on, and it's kind of expensive. But all that considered, I would recommend this deck if you have the Dust, because it's really, really strong right now. And if you don't have some of the cards, like some of the legendaries, you could easily replace it with some silences, with the Horde Operative to copy secrets, another Desperate Prayer for some healing, and all that stuff. So the next deck on this tier list is Miracle Rogue, and you could play this version or the secret version. Both of them are pretty similar. Same basic goal. You want to play tempo, use Octobot to make some of your cards cheaper, play really, really fast, and then burst them late game with things like Tenwu, AAECAZICAA, Jandis for tempo, along with the Wicked Stabs that are basically 2-mana fireballs late game. But yeah, this deck is really complicated to play. You need to manage your resources really well, because you can't overcommit, because if you do, Field Contact won't draw you enough cards, but if you don't commit enough, you won't have enough tempo to beat some of the aggro decks or even the mid-range decks, because you'll just get overrun. So it's really important to figure out how to play this deck. Also, sometimes efficient Octobot is important to keep, and sometimes you keep 2, but into some matchups, maybe you don't want to keep 2, you might want to save 1, so that way you can get 1 later, and that way reduce the cost of some of your game-winning cards like AAECAZICAA and Tenwu and stuff like that. Also, timing things like Cult Neophyte to try to play around removal. Playing Cult Neophyte on turn 8 into a Warlock so they can't twist another could be the difference between winning and losing a game. And there are just a lot of micromanaging things you have to do with this deck, and especially with the Jandis nerf, which lowers your tempo a little bit. It's very hard to play, but it's performing really well at high ranks in Legend, so I think that this deck is pretty good. Also, I've been trying it. I'm 5-3 with it right now, which isn't super impressive, but then again, like I said, it's very difficult to play, and I've definitely made some like huge misplays that have been game losing, so I'm getting there. But yeah, this deck is really fun to play. There's a lot to it. It's not as broken as it used to be with Penflinger, but with AAECAZICAA, there's potential for OTK and other combos that I think is pretty fun. And just because I want to, I'm going to put a meme deck on here, and it is actually Clown Priest. I think that this deck is surprisingly good, and for those of you who don't understand how this deck works, let me explain it real quick. This isn't necessarily a top tier deck, but it actually has proven to be pretty good. So let's just jump right into it. So we have Clown Druid. We want to run as few minions as possible, so that way we can draw the best minions off of Corrupted Insight and reduce their cost by 2, Carnival Clown, and HsReplay being the main ones, and Dark Inquisitor is okay. Playing Dark Inquisitor will lower the cost of Carnival Clown by 2, which makes it a 7-cost card. If you play Draconic Studies, if you type Dragon in right now, most of the dragons in the meta, or a large portion of them, are 9-cost. Alexstrasza, Malygos, Onyxia, Runaway Blackwing, Sleepy Dragon, Ysera, and Deathwing. So basically, you want to play Draconic Studies, find one of these cards. It'll be 8 mana, you'll corrupt your 7 mana Carnival Clown, and then you'll just start playing Carnival Clowns, and once you run out, you play Raise Dead to get 2 more, then Raise Dead again to get 2 more, and then HsReplay to fill your hand with 6 more Carnival Clowns. It's insane. And worst case scenario, if you don't get a dragon, you can play the Idol of HsReplay in order to make sure that you can corrupt a 7 mana Carnival Clown. Running Seer of Sapience has been really good, or Sapience, whatever you want to call it, has been really good as well, because that way you can put cards like the Carnival Clown into the bottom of the deck, so that way you can more likely draw off of Insight, as well as get rid of cards you might not need into particular matchups, like Desperate Prayer, really bad into some matchups like Priest, but really good into some matchups like Hunter. So overall, this deck is a pretty fun meme deck. I'm like 5-2 with it, or 4-2 with it, I think. It's surprisingly good, and the only times you really lose is if you don't get the Dark Inquisitor off in time, and if that happens, you're sad. But it does well into aggro because you have a ton of removal and good healing, and you also don't run any minions, so Hunter can't use the Tundra Rhino, or not Tundra Rhino, the Trampling Rhino on you. So a lot of things go well for this deck. I would highly recommend trying it if you haven't already. It's not that expensive. You don't need Seer of Sapience. You could run another Devouring Plague instead of it, and that is about it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you do, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. And yeah, if you like this kind of video, let me know. I'm probably going to be doing this every single week, seeing if the meta shifts, and I want to know what your guys' opinions on this are.